everyone, it's Wendy. Welcome back to my channel, Show Me Mo Vegan, and another CSA video. If you haven't already, go back and check out my video for week 1 of my CSA, that's Community Supported Agriculture. So in that video, I showed you week 1 and everything I got and what I did with it. I didn't make a video for week 2, but I'll throw in a picture for you so you can see what I got last week. And then I wanted to show you this week because there was one item that I've never used before, so that's always exciting. That's one great reason for joining a CSA. You might get produce that you don't buy all the time. And I also got strawberries again this week, so I wanted to show you a special treat that I'm gonna make to go with my strawberries. So let's take a look at what I got this week. Once again, I got 2 bunches of kale, and it's the Dino kale again, which I love. That's one of my favorites. And then I got a couple heads of these little lettuces, and then the strawberries like I mentioned, and we got another head of lettuce there. And then right here we've got some mint, so I'm going to use that with my strawberries this week. I also got some flowers this time. And then right here, this is the product that I haven't used before. These are garlic scapes. And I'm not a farmer or a gardener by any means, but from what I've looked up, my understanding is that for just a particular type of garlic, you also get garlic scapes. So this is what grows up out of the garlic plant, and you have to harvest it in order for all of the energy of the plant to go to actually growing nice bulbs of garlic. But then you can also eat these. It sounds like they have a mild garlic flavor and can just be used as a garlic flavoring in any dish, or some people will saute them. I've also seen recipes for pesto made out of garlic scapes, and you can also pickle them. I think for my first attempt, I'm just going to saute them up with some other veggies, but I will show you whatever I end up doing. Okay, for my pudding, I'm starting with silken tofu. I like these that come in the shelf-stable packages. You can also find silken tofu in the refrigerated section. Silken tofu is not something that I use regularly since it is a little more processed, so that's why I go with the shelf-stable version, so I have it on hand anytime that I might choose to use it. Next up, I'm using date powder or date sugar, which is just whole dates that are dried and ground up. Most recipes I've seen for this kind of pudding use something like maple syrup, but I wanted to be a little bit more whole food centered. And then I just added some cacao powder, and then I'm blending it up, and that's it. So you might need to scrape down the sides a few times, but it comes together just that easy, and of course I have to steal a little taste. And if you do choose to use something like maple syrup instead for a sweetener, this will be a really nice, creamy, thin pudding. But mine, since I use the date sugar, it is a little bit thicker, and so that's why I called it fudgy pudding, because it's so thick and delicious. It's almost the consistency of something like a Greek yogurt. And next, why am I pulling out beans? Well, we're using the bean juice. This is called aquafaba, and it's pretty magical. I'm adding a little cream of tartar here because I'm going to attempt to make whipped cream out of my aquafaba. This is something I have never done before. I've used aquafaba in baking and other applications, but I haven't tried to make the whipped cream, so I was really excited to try it out. This would be easier in a stand mixer, but I'm just using this hand mixer that I borrowed from my mom because I make desserts like this so infrequently that I don't even have my own mixer. But after just a minute or two of mixing, I'm going to go ahead and add some vanilla extract. And then to sweeten it up, I'm using date syrup. Again, you could use maple syrup or you could use a powdered sugar. As you can see with the date syrup, it turned my whipped cream a brown color. It almost looks chocolate, which, I mean, you could add some cocoa powder in there too to make it a chocolate whipped cream. But just know if you were to make this with maple syrup or especially the powdered sugar, it would turn out to be more of a traditional white whipped cream, but I don't really care what color it is. It ended up tasting delicious. You will need to whip this for a while. Again, like I said, this was the first time I did it, and it ended up taking me about 6 or 7 minutes total to whip, but then you can see you start to get those nice soft peaks that everyone talks about when they make whipped cream. Online, I've seen that it can take as little as 3 minutes to come together. So I'm guessing all of that depends on humidity and altitude and all sorts of things that might affect your whipped cream. So now I'm just chopping up some strawberries to go with my pudding, and you can't see it there, but I already have a bowl of the chocolate pudding and I'm adding the strawberries, and I am not very good at plating. Normally I would just dump the strawberries on and it would not be a fancy plating, but I always try, and of course it still never turns out very beautiful. I think I tried too hard. Anyway, my mom is gonna make fun of this, but I'll reveal my beautiful creation in just a moment. And now I'm putting on that whipped topping and then adding a few mint leaves for garnish, and voila, here is my little creation. What do you guys think? So I know I'm not the best at plating, but it's not that bad. Although maybe it kind of looks like some sort of little creature. But look at that whipped cream. So delicious. Next up, I wanted to use my garlic scapes. So this is what they look like. And I researched a little bit about it online, and that bud at the tip, it sounds like you can eat that or you can discard it. A lot of people said they did not like to eat them, but then a lot of people said they're just fine to eat. For this first time, I decided to cut those off, and then I also just trimmed a little bit off of the other end, and I'm going to save all of those pieces to use for broth. So I just threw them in the freezer. That's how I keep my vegetable scraps so they're ready to go whenever I want to make veggie broth. And then I'm showing you here, I already had about a half of a very large red onion that I had previously chopped up and saved in the refrigerator. And then here I have a couple zucchini, and I'll just chop those into nice bite-sized pieces. Next, I have a couple of tomatoes. I was going to use cherry tomatoes, but these vine-ripe tomatoes that I got from the store looked really good. So I'm also just cutting those up into bite-sized pieces. And then I'm also using potatoes for this recipe, and these are pre-cooked potatoes. They're Yukon Gold potatoes that I cooked in my Instant Pot. And all you have to do is put in your trivet, pour about a cup of water in the bottom, and then layer in your potatoes. I cooked them for about 12 minutes at high pressure and then did a quick release. And then I keep these in the fridge to use anytime. And that way it makes recipes come together really fast. So here I'm putting together my seasoning. So I've got some onion and garlic powder, and then some black pepper, some celery seed, and dill. You could use fresh dill, but I just had dried. Then I have some red wine vinegar and some stone ground mustard. You could use any kind of mustard that you like. I like this one because it is salt-free. I will put all of the amounts for what I used in a link in the description box for you. So hopping over to the stove top, I'm just adding the onion to the skillet and we'll saute for a few minutes until it softens. Next, I'm adding those garlic scapes and I'll let that saute another couple of minutes. I'm water sauteing, so there's no need to use oil. Just add some splashes of water anytime something starts to stick. Next, I'm adding my zucchini. I added another little splash of water and then put the lid on to steam the zucchini for a couple minutes. And then I'm just dumping everything else in. So I'm using a mixture of whole grains, and I had already pre-cooked this and had it in the fridge, so I just took a nice big scoop of that. This one was a mix of 2 different kinds of wheat berries, barley, and my favorite grain, sorghum. And then I have a can of lentils. Lentils are so quick to cook that normally I just cook them from dried, but in this case I was being lazy, and so I just threw in a can that I had drained and rinsed. And then we've got the tomatoes and the potatoes. Say that 10 times fast. And all of our spices, as well as the mustard and vinegar. I'll give everything a good stir. And this would be ready to eat now, but I decided to put the lid on just to let all those flavors come together a little bit. Of course, you gotta give it a little taste test, and that is ready to go. So I served it up on top of a bed of some of that lettuce that I got in my CSA share, and I'm just piling that on top. I did eat this warm right out of the skillet, but later in the week I had my leftovers cold. So you could eat this as a warm or a cold salad. Either way is delicious. A couple other highlights from the week. I steamed some of the kale and I had it with these lentil patties that I made. The lentil patties also had oats and the mixed grains that I showed you before. And I simply dressed the kale with vinegar and mustard. And then with the rest of the mint that I got, I decided to make up this creation. I also had some broccolini that needed to be used. So I steamed the broccolini and then I put that in the food processor with some lemon zest and lemon juice, as well as my mint and some parsley. Just ground that up and made this sort of pesto-like thing. There's no oil or nuts in it. It would have been delicious if I had added some walnuts or sunflower seeds. And I actually ended up putting this on top of a salad with some sunflower seeds. And I used the lettuce from my CSA in that salad. I also put this broccolini paste in the pita pockets with my lentil patties, and it was delicious. Finally, I used it on some pasta with a creamy white bean sauce. So that about wraps up week 3 of my CSA. I hope you enjoyed seeing how I used everything and that it gave you some ideas for your next plant-based meal. As always, I'd love it if you'd let me know in the comments what you thought. Give this video a like, and if you haven't already, subscribe to my channel and hit the notification bell so you'll always know when I post a new video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.